The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite, creating a rhythm that matched the thundering of Maya's heart. She stood frozen, her back pressed against the mahogany door, her breathing shallow and rapid. The silk robe she wore, cream-colored and barely reaching mid-thigh, felt like nothing against her skin. Her dark curls cascaded over her shoulders, still damp from the shower she'd taken to calm her nerves. It hadn't worked. Across the room, Daniel stood by the window, his white shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest, revealing the toned muscles beneath. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, and his dark hair was disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. The city lights of Lagos glittered behind him, but all Maya could focus on was the intensity in his eyes as he turned to face her. "We can't keep pretending," Daniel said, his voice low and rough, cutting through the sound of the rain. "Not anymore." Maya's breath hitched. "Daniel, 3 months, Maya." He took a step toward her, and she felt the air shift, become charged with something electric. 3 months of this marriage, of living under the same roof, of pretending we don't feel this thing between us. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This was just a contract. A business arrangement." He closed the distance between them in 3 long strides, stopping just inches from her. She could smell his cologne, something woody and masculine that made her knees weak. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her jawline with a gentleness that contradicted the fire in his eyes. "Tell me you don't feel this," he challenged, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Tell me your heart doesn't race every time I walk into a room. Tell me you don't think about me when you're lying in your bed at night, just across the hall from mine." Maya's eyes fluttered closed. She couldn't tell him that because it would be a lie. Every word he spoke was the truth. She did think about him. Constantly. The way he looked at her across the dinner table. The accidental touches when they passed each other in the hallway. The sound of his voice when he took business calls in his study. Everything about Daniel Roberts had invaded her thoughts, her dreams, her very soul. "We shouldn't." She started, but her protest died on her lips as his other hand found her waist, pulling her closer. "Give me one good reason why not," he murmured, his lips hovering just above hers. "One reason that isn't about contracts or business, or what people will think." Maya's hands had somehow found their way to his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palms. "Because when this ends, when the contract is over, it will hurt too much." Daniel's expression shifted, something raw and vulnerable flashing across his features. "And what if I don't want it to end?" Before Maya could process his words, his mouth was on hers, and the world exploded into sensation. This wasn't their first kiss. They'd had to kiss at their wedding, perform for the cameras and their families. But this was different. This was real. This was desperate and consuming, and everything Maya had been fighting against for 3 agonizing months. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her fingers threading through his hair as his hands explored her waist, her back, pulling her impossibly closer. The silk robe was a whisper of fabric between them, and Maya could feel the heat of his body burning through it. Daniel backed her against the door, his mouth moving from her lips to her jaw, then down to her neck, finding that sensitive spot just below her ear that made her gasp. His hands slid down to her thighs, and in one smooth motion he lifted her. Maya wrapped her legs around his waist, her body responding to him in ways that made her forget every reason why this was a bad idea. "Say you want this," Daniel breathed against her skin, his voice ragged. "Say you want me." "I want you," Maya confessed, the words tumbling out between gasps. "God help me, I want you so much." But as Daniel laid her on the bed, his body covering hers, his weight both grounding and thrilling, Maya felt every wall she'd built crumbling. His hands traced the curves of her body with reverence, like she was something precious he'd been waiting his whole life to discover. "You're trembling," he whispered against her collarbone, his lips trailing fire across her skin. "I'm nervous," Maya admitted, her fingers clutching his shoulders. "This changes everything, Daniel." "I know." He lifted his head to look at her, his dark eyes searching hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "I want it to change everything. I want you, Maya. Not because of any contract. Not because we have to. Because I choose you." His words undid her completely. She pulled him down to her, kissing him with all the pent-up longing of 3 months of fighting this attraction. Daniel responded with equal passion, his hands sliding beneath the silk of her robe, finding skin that burned at his touch. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against her lips, even as his hands continued their exploration. "Tell me this isn't what you want, and I'll walk away right now." "Don't stop," Maya breathed, arching into him. Don't you dare stop. The silk robe slipped from her shoulders, pooling around her like water. Daniel's shirt followed, discarded somewhere in the tangle of sheets and desire. Every touch was electric, every kiss a promise. Maya's hands explored the hard planes of his chest, the muscles of his back, memorizing every inch of him. You're so beautiful, Daniel whispered, his voice rough with emotion as he looked at her. Do you have any idea what you do to me? How crazy you make me. Maya couldn't form words, could only pull him closer, losing herself in the feel of his skin against hers, the weight of him, the way he made her feel cherished and wanted and alive. Outside, the rain continued its symphony, but inside their world had narrowed to just this, just them, finally giving in to what they'd been fighting for so long. Welcome back to African Love Chronicles, your favorite place for stories soaked in passion and soul-deep romance. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment to tell us your favorite part of the story. Your support keeps these love tales flowing strong. Thanks for always supporting us. Now, grab your popcorn and let's dive in. Maya Johnson stood in the hospital corridor, her phone pressed to her ear, trying to keep her voice steady even as panic clawed at her throat. The antiseptic smell of the hospital burned her nostrils, a constant reminder of where she'd been spending most of her days for the past 3 weeks. I understand, Mr. Okafor, but there must be another payment plan, Maya pleaded into the phone, her free hand gripping the edge of the waiting room chair. I just need a little more time. The insurance company is still processing. Miss Johnson, I've given you as much time as I can. The hospital administrator's voice was firm, but not unkind. The medical bills have exceeded 3 million naira. Without payment, we'll have to discharge your father, and in his condition. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Maya knew exactly what would happen if her father was discharged now. The cancer had spread, and he needed another round of chemotherapy and surgery. Without it, the doctors gave him 3 months. Maybe less. I'll get you the money, Maya said, though she had no idea how. Just give me 1 more week. Please. She ended the call and let her head fall into her hands. At 25, Maya had thought she'd have more time before facing something like this. Her father, Thomas Johnson, had been her rock after her mother died 5 years ago. He'd worked 2 jobs to put her through university, never complaining, always smiling. Now he lay in a bed 3 doors down, his once strong body ravaged by disease, and Maya was helpless. Maya, her best friend, Grace, appeared beside her with 2 cups of coffee. Any news? Maya took the coffee gratefully, letting the warmth seep into her cold hands. They want 3 million naira by next week, or they'll discharge him. Grace's eyes widened. 3 million? Where are you going to get that kind of money? I don't know. Maya's voice cracked. I've applied for loans everywhere. No one will approve me. I don't have collateral, and my job at the publishing house barely covers rent and basic expenses. Maya worked as a junior editor at Sterling Publishing, one of Lagos's mid-sized publishing houses. She loved books, loved words, loved the magic of taking a rough manuscript and helping shape it into something beautiful. But the pay was modest, and she'd already maxed out her credit cards paying for her father's initial treatments. What about your uncle? Didn't he say he'd help? Grace asked. Maya's laugh was bitter. Uncle Raymond said family is important, but not important enough to actually part with any money. He suggested I sell my father's house, but it's mortgaged to the roof, and even if I could sell it, the money wouldn't be enough. Grace squeezed her hand. We'll figure something out. There has to be a way. But as Maya sat there in that sterile hospital corridor, watching doctors and nurses rush past, listening to the beep of machines and the whispers of other families fighting their own battles, she couldn't see a way out. She was drowning, and there was no life raft in sight. That evening, Maya dragged herself home to the small 2-bedroom apartment in Surulere she'd shared with her father before his hospitalization. The space felt too empty without him. His reading glasses still sat on the coffee table next to his favorite mystery novel. His slippers were by the door. The smell of his cologne lingered in the air. Maya collapsed on the couch, too exhausted even to cry. Her phone buzzed. A text from her boss. Need those manuscripts edited by Friday. Can't give you any more extensions. She'd been falling behind at work, her mind too occupied with her father's illness to focus properly. She couldn't afford to lose her job, but she also couldn't abandon her father. It felt like she was being pulled apart. Another buzz. This time an unknown number. Miss Johnson, this is Patrick Webb, assistant to George Roberts. Mr. Roberts requests a meeting with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. regarding a matter of mutual benefit. Please confirm your attendance. Maya stared at the message. George Roberts? The George Roberts? The patriarch of the Roberts family, one of the wealthiest families in Nigeria? They owned Roberts Industries, a conglomerate with interests in oil, real estate, manufacturing, and technology. Why would George Roberts want to meet with her? She typed back, I think you have the wrong person. The response came immediately, no mistake. The meeting concerns your father's medical situation. 10 a.m. at Roberts Tower, Victoria Island. A car will pick you up. Maya's heart began to race. How did George Roberts know about her father? She'd never met the man, had no connection to his world. But if there was even a chance this meeting could help her father, she had to take it. She texted back, I'll be there. The next morning, Maya stood in front of her tiny closet, trying to figure out what one wore to meet a billionaire. She settled on her most professional outfit, a navy blue dress that was 2 years old but still looked presentable, paired with simple black heels. She pulled her curly hair back into a neat bun and applied minimal makeup. Looking in the mirror, she looked exactly like what she was. A young woman trying her best to appear more confident than she felt. The car that arrived at 9:30 was a sleek black Mercedes with tinted windows. The driver, an older man in a crisp uniform, held the door open for her without a word. As they drove through Lagos traffic toward Victoria Island, Maya watched the city transform around her. The crowded streets and bustling markets of Surulere gave way to the upscale neighborhoods and modern high-rises of Six. Roberts Tower was impossible to miss, a gleaming glass and steel structure that seemed to pierce the sky. The lobby alone was larger than Maya's entire apartment, all marble floors and contemporary art pieces that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Patrick Webb met her at reception. He was a thin man in his 40s, impeccably dressed, with the efficient air of someone who managed impossible schedules and made miracles happen daily. Miss Johnson, thank you for coming. Please follow me. They took a private elevator to the top floor. Maya's ears popped from the rapid ascent. The elevator opened directly into an office that took her breath away. Windows on 3 sides offered panoramic views of Lagos, the ocean, the bridges, the sprawl of humanity below. The office itself was a study in understated luxury. Dark wood, leather furniture, and that same contemporary art that seemed to be everywhere in this building. George Roberts stood by the window, his back to her. Even at 75, he cut an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with white hair that gleamed in the morning light. When he turned, Maya was struck by his eyes, sharp, intelligent, and surprisingly kind. Miss Johnson, please sit. His voice was deep, cultured, carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Maya sat in one of the leather chairs facing his massive desk, her purse clutched in her lap like a shield. George sat across from her, folding his hands on the desk. I imagine you're wondering why I asked you here. Yes, sir. Your message mentioned my father. Thomas Johnson. Good man. I knew him many years ago when he worked for one of my subsidiaries. Before you were born, actually. George's expression softened slightly. I was sorry to hear about his illness. Maya's throat tightened. Thank you, but I don't understand how. I make it my business to keep track of people who once worked for me, especially those who left a positive impression. When I learned of Thomas's situation, I felt compelled to help. However, he paused, leaning back in his chair, I find myself in need of something as well. A problem that, coincidentally, you are uniquely positioned to help me solve. Maya's confusion must have shown on her face because George smiled slightly. Let me be direct, Miss Johnson. I need you to marry my grandson. The words hung in the air between them. Maya was certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? My grandson, Daniel Roberts. I need you to marry him. For 1 year. In exchange, I will pay for all of your father's medical expenses, past, present, and future, and provide you with a salary of 5 million naira per month for the duration of the marriage. Maya's mind reeled. 5 million naira per month? That was more than she made in a year. And her father's medical bills covered? But marry a stranger? I don't understand, she said slowly. Why would anyone? George stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. My grandson is set to inherit a controlling interest in Roberts Industries on his 30th birthday, which is in 6 weeks. However, there's a clause in the trust his late father established. Daniel must be married to receive his inheritance. If he's unmarried, the controlling shares go to his cousin, Marcus, who would run this company into the ground within 5 years. But surely Mr. Roberts, your grandson, surely he could find someone to marry. Someone from his own world. Daniel is stubborn and proud. He refuses to marry for business reasons, saying he'll marry for love or not at all. Admirable, but impractical. He's wasted years avoiding suitable matches, and now we're out of time. George turned to face her. I need someone he doesn't know, someone who needs the arrangement as much as we do. Someone who will keep to the contract and walk away when the year is up. And you think I'm that person? Maya's voice was barely a whisper. I know you are. You're educated, well-spoken, presentable. You need money desperately enough to consider this, but you're not the type to get greedy and try to extend the arrangement. You want to save your father and return to your normal life. That makes you perfect. Maya's hands were shaking. This was insane. People didn't do things like this, not in real life. But then again, real life had her father dying in a hospital bed while she scrambled for money she didn't have. What would this marriage entail exactly? She asked, her practical side taking over despite the surreal nature of the conversation. George returned to his desk and pulled out a thick document. The contract is detailed, but the essentials are these. You will marry Daniel in a public ceremony. You will live with him in the family estate for 1 year. You will present as a loving couple at all necessary business and social functions. In private, your relationship can be whatever you both agree to, but publicly, you must appear happily married. And after the year? A quiet divorce. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement and receive a final settlement payment of 20 million naira. Your father's medical care will be guaranteed for life, regardless of the cost. 20 million naira. That would be enough to secure her father's future and maybe even start her own small publishing venture, something she'd dreamed about for years. What about Mr. Roberts, Daniel? Does he know about this plan? George's expression tightened. Daniel is being informed as we speak. He's not pleased, but he'll agree. He has no choice if he wants to protect his father's legacy and the jobs of the 15,000 people who work for this company. So he's being forced into this too, Maya said quietly. Yes. Which is why I need you to understand something, Miss Johnson. George's eyes bore into hers. This arrangement will not be easy. Daniel will resent you, at least at first. He's a good man, but he's been hurt before, and he has a habit of keeping people at arm's length. You'll need to be strong, patient, and resilient. Can you do that? Maya thought of her father's smile, the way he'd raised her alone after her mother's death, the sacrifices he'd made so she could have a better life. She thought of him lying in that hospital bed, his body failing him, his time running out. Can I see the full contract? She asked. George slid it across the desk. Take your time. My driver will wait to take you home. Maya spent 2 hours reading every word of that contract, making notes, asking questions. Patrick Webb appeared at some point with tea and sandwiches that Maya barely touched. The document was thorough, covering everything from public appearances to living arrangements to the eventual divorce proceedings. There was one clause that caught her attention. The contracted parties agree to maintain the appearance of a real marriage in all public and family settings, including but not limited to physical affection appropriate to a married couple. However, the marriage need not be consummated, and both parties maintain the right to refuse physical intimacy at any time. That clause made it real in a way nothing else had. This wouldn't just be a signature on a paper. She'd be living with this man, eating meals with him, sleeping under the same roof, pretending to be in love. For a year. I need to think about it, Maya said finally, looking up at George. You have until tomorrow morning. Your father's next treatment is scheduled for the day after tomorrow. Without payment, it won't happen. George's tone wasn't cruel, just factual. Maya left Roberts Tower in a daze. The driver took her back to Suralere, and she spent the rest of the day at the hospital, sitting by her father's bedside, holding his hand while he slept. He looked so frail, so different from the strong man who used to carry her on his shoulders and tell her stories about her mother. What do I do, Dad? She whispered, knowing he couldn't hear her. How do I choose? But she already knew the choice had been made the moment George Roberts mentioned the money. Because there was nothing she wouldn't do to save her father's life, even if it meant selling herself into a temporary marriage to a man she'd never met. That night, she texted Patrick Webb, I'll do it. The response came within seconds. Contract signing tomorrow at 9 a.m. Medical payments will be processed immediately after. Maya lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what she'd just agreed to. Somewhere across the city, Daniel Roberts was presumably doing the same thing, hating his grandfather, hating this situation, and probably hating her too, even though they'd never met. Tomorrow, she'd sign away a year of her life. But at least her father would live to see her do it. The contract signing took place in a different office at Roberts Tower, this one set up like a formal conference room. Maya arrived 10 minutes early, wearing the same navy dress she'd worn yesterday because it was the most professional thing she owned. Patrick Webb was there, along with two lawyers who nodded at her, but said nothing. George Roberts sat at the head of the table, looking every inch the patriarch orchestrating his family's future. And then there was Daniel. Maya's breath caught when he walked into the room. She'd seen pictures of him online during her late-night research, but none of them had prepared her for the reality of Daniel Roberts in person. He was tall, at least 6 feet, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, like he'd been running his hands through it. His suit probably cost more than 3 months of her salary, cut perfectly to emphasize his athletic build. But it was his eyes that struck her most, dark, intense, and currently burning with barely contained fury. He looked at her, and Maya felt the full force of his resentment. In his gaze, she wasn't a person. She was a problem, an obstacle, a necessary evil in a situation neither of them wanted. "Let's get this over with," Daniel said, his voice cold as he took a seat across from her without offering any greeting. George frowned. "Daniel, this is Maya Johnson, the woman who will be your wife. The least you can do is—" "I know who she is." Daniel's eyes never left Maya's face. "I know exactly who she is and why she's here. For the money. So let's skip the pleasantries and sign the papers." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "You're right. I am here for the money. For my father's medical care. But you're here too, Mr. Roberts, also for money, your inheritance. So maybe we should both get off our high horses and accept that we're in the same situation." Something flickered in Daniel's eyes, surprise maybe, or reluctant respect. George actually smiled. "I like her," George announced. "She's got spirit. You'll need that, Daniel." "What I need," Daniel said through gritted teeth, "is not to be forced into a sham marriage because of a ridiculous clause in my father's trust. But since we're all pretending that's not an option, let's proceed." The lawyers walked them through the contract, page by page. Maya had read it thoroughly the day before, but hearing it out loud in this formal setting, with Daniel's anger radiating across the table, made it feel even more real. They would marry within 2 weeks. The wedding would be a small but public affair, attended by close family and friends, with enough media presence to establish the marriage's legitimacy. Maya would move into the Roberts family estate, a sprawling compound in Ikoyi. She would attend business functions as needed. She would be provided with a wardrobe allowance, a car, and the 5 million naira monthly salary. After 1 year, they would divorce quietly. Maya would receive her final settlement and disappear from Daniel's life and the public eye. "Do you have any questions?" the lead lawyer asked Maya. She had 1,000 questions, but only one that mattered. "My father's treatment, when will the payments be processed?" "As soon as both parties sign, the first payment will be wired to the hospital," Patrick Webb confirmed. "Your father's treatment can proceed this afternoon." Maya nodded, blinking back tears of relief. At least her father would live. Whatever happened to her in the next year, her father would live. "Miss Johnson." The lawyer held out a pen. She took it, her hand surprisingly steady. On the line marked for her signature, she wrote her name, Maya Grace Johnson. The pen felt heavy, each letter a chain being forged. "Mr. Roberts?" Daniel stared at the contract for a long moment. His jaw clenched so tight Maya could see the muscle jumping. Then, with angry precision, he signed his name, Daniel Christopher Roberts. "Congratulations," George said, though there was no warmth in the word. "You're now engaged. The wedding is scheduled for 2 weeks from today. Maya, Patrick will coordinate with you on all the details. Daniel, I expect you to be civil and cooperative." Daniel stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I'll play my part, grandfather. But don't expect me to pretend I'm happy about it." He left without another word, without looking at Maya again. The door closing behind him sounded like a cell door slamming shut. Maya sat there, the signed contract in front of her, feeling the weight of what she'd done. She'd just agreed to marry a man who hated her, who saw her as nothing more than a gold digger taking advantage of his family's situation. "He'll come around," George said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Give him time." "Time is all we have," Maya replied quietly. 1 year of it. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity that felt surreal. Patrick Webb proved to be an efficient taskmaster, orchestrating every detail of Maya's transformation from struggling editor to billionaire's bride. First came the wardrobe. Maya was taken to exclusive boutiques she'd only ever walked past before, where consultants pulled dresses, shoes, and accessories while discussing her look, as if she were a product being marketed. She tried to maintain some sense of her own style, but everything felt foreign. The designer labels, the price tags that made her dizzy, the way everyone suddenly treated her with deference simply because she was associated with the Roberts name. You'll need pieces for casual family dinners, business events, charity galas, and of course the wedding. The stylist, a woman named Tony, explained while draping Maya in what felt like the 100th outfit. Mr. Roberts's wife needs to project elegance, sophistication, and warmth. But not actually be any of those things. Maya muttered. Tony paused, then smiled slightly. I like you. You're real. Don't lose that, okay? They'll try to make you into someone else, but don't let them. It was the most genuine interaction Maya had with anyone from Daniel's world during those 2 weeks. She met Daniel only twice more before the wedding. Once for an awkward dinner with George and some family friends, where they had to practice being a couple. Daniel was coldly polite, calling her darling, in a tone that made the endearment sound like an insult. Maya smiled until her face hurt and made small talk about how they'd met, through family connections, they told people, and fell in love. Gradually, naturally, neither of them able to explain when the switch from friendship to romance had supposedly happened. The second meeting was for their engagement photos. A photographer came to Roberts Tower and posed them in the penthouse lounge, standing by the windows with the city behind them, sitting close on a couch, Daniel's arm around Maya's shoulders. Look at each other, the photographer instructed. Mr. Roberts, angle your body toward her more. Miss Johnson, put your hand on his chest. Natural, like you do this all the time. Maya placed her hand on Daniel's chest and felt his heart beating beneath her palm. For a moment, their eyes met, and she saw something complicated there. Anger still, yes, but also exhaustion and something that might have been curiosity. You don't have to do this, you know, Daniel said quietly while the photographer adjusted his camera. You could still walk away. So could you, Maya replied. It's not that simple for me. This company, these people's jobs. And it's not that simple for me. My father's life. She stopped, took a breath. We're both trapped, Mr. Roberts. We might as well be trapped together. Don't call me Mr. Roberts. We're supposed to be getting married. What should I call you then? Daniel. Just Daniel. His expression softened fractionally. And I'm sorry. About your father. I didn't mean to. I know you're not doing this to hurt anyone. It was the first kind thing he'd said to her, and Maya felt something loosen in her chest. I know you're not either. Your grandfather told me about the trust, about protecting the company. That's not selfish. The photographer interrupted before Daniel could respond. Beautiful. That's the look we need. Whatever you're talking about, keep talking. They didn't, though. The moment passed, and Daniel's walls went back up, and Maya wondered if she'd imagined that brief flash of understanding between them. Grace helped Maya pack up her apartment the night before the wedding. Most of her things would go into storage. The contract specified she'd live at the Roberts estate for the year, and somehow bringing her beat-up furniture and collection of mystery novels into a mansion seemed absurd. Are you sure about this? Grace asked for the 100th time, wrapping Maya's favorite coffee mug in newspaper. It's not too late to back out. Yes, it is. Dad had his surgery 3 days ago. The doctors say the tumor is responding to treatment. He's going to live, Grace. Because of this contract. But at what cost to you? Maya sat on her empty bed, looking around the apartment that had been her home for 3 years. 1 year of my life. That's the cost. And honestly, if it saves my father, it's worth it. What if you fall for him? Grace asked quietly. Daniel Roberts. What if spending a year with him, pretending to be in love, what if it becomes real for you? It won't. He hates me, remember? And this is just business. After the year is up, I take my settlement, make sure Dad is set up for life, and move on. People always think they can keep their hearts out of things, Grace said, giving Maya a knowing look. But hearts don't work that way. Maya thought about that conversation the next day as she stood in the bridal suite at Our Lady of Mercy Catholic Church in Victoria Island, wearing a wedding dress that cost more than her car. The dress was beautiful, ivory lace with long sleeves and a fitted bodice that flared into a full skirt. She looked like a princess. She felt like a fraud. Through the door, she could hear the string quartet playing, the murmur of 200 guests, most of whom she'd never met. The preparations for a wedding that was nothing but an elaborate performance. There was a knock and Patrick Webb entered. "It's time, Miss Johnson." "Maya," she corrected. "If I'm about to become a Roberts, I might as well use my first name." Patrick smiled. "Maya, then. Your father is here. He insisted on being released from the hospital to walk you down the aisle." Tears sprang to Maya's eyes. "He's supposed to be resting. Try telling him that. He's quite determined. Some things matter more than doctor's orders." Thomas Johnson looked thin and pale in his suit, but his smile was strong as he took Maya's arm in the church foyer. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Just like your mother on our wedding day. Daddy, you shouldn't be here. You should be in the hospital. And miss walking my daughter down the aisle? Not a chance." He squeezed her hand. "I know this isn't how you plan things. I know this marriage is complicated. But Maya, I want you to know, you don't have to do this for me." "Yes, I do," Maya whispered. "You gave up everything for me after Mom died. You worked yourself to exhaustion to give me a good life. This is me giving back. That's not how family works, baby girl. Then I'm doing it because I love you, and I can't lose you." "Okay." Thomas's eyes were wet as he nodded. The church doors opened, and the wedding march began. Maya's first glimpse of Daniel waiting at the altar took her breath away. He wore a black tuxedo that fit him perfectly, his hair styled, his expression carefully neutral. But as she walked toward him, his eyes met hers, and for a moment, just a moment, she saw something raw and real there. Fear. Uncertainty. The same things she was feeling. They were in this together, she realized. Two people drowning, clinging to the same life raft, whether they wanted to or not. The ceremony was traditional, the priest speaking about love and commitment and the sacred bond of marriage. Every word felt like a lie, but Maya spoke her vows clearly, looking into Daniel's eyes, trying to pretend this was real. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Daniel's hands came up to frame her face with unexpected gentleness. His kiss was soft, brief, appropriate for a church wedding. But Maya felt it all the way to her toes, a spark of something she couldn't name and didn't want to examine. As they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, Daniel leaned close and whispered, "Welcome to your prison, Mrs. Roberts." "Right back at you, Mr. Roberts," Maya replied. And despite everything, the contract, the lies, the strangers applauding their union, they both almost smiled. The Roberts estate in Ikoyi was less a house and more a compound. The main residence was a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, 3 stories of architectural brilliance surrounded by manicured gardens, a pool house, staff quarters, and a garage that housed cars worth more than most people's homes. Maya's first night as Mrs. Daniel Roberts was spent in the master suite, a space larger than her entire former apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens and, beyond them, Lagos Lagoon. The bedroom alone had a sitting area, a walk-in closet the size of her old bedroom, and an ensuite bathroom with both a massive tub and a rain shower. "Your things have been moved into the closet," Daniel said, standing in the doorway, still in his tuxedo though he'd removed the jacket and loosened his bow tie. The wedding reception had lasted until nearly midnight. 5 hours of smiling and dancing and accepting congratulations from people who had no idea the truth. Maya was exhausted, emotionally and physically. "Thank you," she said, suddenly awkward. The marriage might be fake, but they were alone now in a bedroom, and the reality of what came next hung heavy in the air. Daniel seemed to read her thoughts. "I'll take one of the guest rooms down the hall. You have this room to yourself. The contract said we need to maintain appearances. For the staff and anyone who visits, yes. But when we're alone, actually alone, we don't have to pretend." His voice was flat, businesslike. "The staff knows to knock before entering. As long as we appear together in the mornings and evenings, no one will question the arrangement." Maya nodded, a complicated mix of relief and something else she didn't want to name washing over her. "Okay." Daniel moved to the closet and pulled out some clothes. "I'll get the rest of my things tomorrow. If you need anything, my room is 3 doors down on the left." "Daniel," Maya called as he reached the door. He turned, one eyebrow raised. Today wasn't entirely terrible. Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe. "No," he agreed quietly. "It wasn't." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Maya stood alone in her enormous new bedroom, still wearing her wedding dress, and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. The first month of marriage was an exercise in awkward cohabitation. They developed a routine out of necessity. Breakfast together at 7 in the formal dining room, where Daniel read business news on his tablet while Maya nursed coffee and tried not to stare at how good he looked in the mornings. Hair slightly mussed, dressed in impeccable suits that somehow made him look both powerful and devastatingly attractive. "You don't have to sit with me if you don't want to," Maya said one morning after the first week. "I know this is an imposition on your normal routine." Daniel looked up from his tablet. "The staff expects us to eat together. Besides, I always had breakfast alone before. This isn't worse." "What a ringing endorsement," Maya said dryly. "It's not worse than eating alone." Was that almost a smile on his face? "I meant," he stopped, seemed to reconsider. "You're not terrible company. Also not worse. You're really sweeping me off my feet here." This time he definitely smiled, just a little, before returning to his tablet. But Maya counted it as a victory. During the days, Daniel went to Roberts Industries headquarters while Maya was expected to. What? She wasn't entirely sure. George had mentioned she might take on some charity work, attend ladies' luncheons, be the perfect society wife. The thought made her want to scream. Instead, she explored the estate, discovered the library, a 2-story room filled with first editions and leather-bound volumes that made her editor's heart sing, and spent hours there reading, making notes for a novel she'd always dreamed of writing but never had time for. Martha, the head housekeeper, found her there one afternoon, curled up in a leather armchair with a copy of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. "Mrs. Roberts, you have a fitting for the charity gala at 3, Martha reminded her gently. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Please call me Maya." Being called Mrs. Roberts still felt strange, like playing dress-up in someone else's life. "That wouldn't be appropriate, ma'am." But Martha's tone was warm. "Mr. Daniel likes the library too. You'll often find him here in the evenings, though he usually reads business journals rather than novels." "Daniel reads for pleasure?" Maya couldn't picture it, the cold, businesslike man she ate breakfast with getting lost in a story. "He used to before." Martha trailed off, seeming to catch herself. "Well, that was a long time ago. I'll have the car brought around for your appointment." Maya wondered what Martha had been about to say. Before what? What had changed Daniel from someone who read novels to someone who only read business journals? The charity gala that weekend was her first major public appearance as Daniel's wife outside of the wedding. Patrick Webb had briefed her extensively. This was the Roberts Foundation annual Children's Hospital fundraiser, one of the biggest events of the Lagos social calendar. She needed to look perfect, act gracious, and most importantly, appear madly in love with her new husband. The dress Tony had chosen was stunning, a floor-length emerald green gown that brought out the warm undertones in Maya's brown skin. It was elegant without being overly revealing, the kind of dress that said successful businessman's wife, rather than trophy bride. Daniel was in the study when she came downstairs, and when he looked up and saw her, he went completely still. "Is it okay?" Maya asked, suddenly self-conscious. Tony said emerald was a good color, but if it's too much. "You look beautiful," Daniel said, and there was something in his voice that made her heart skip. Not the cold politeness he usually used, but something genuine. "Really beautiful." "Thank you. You look good too." He did. Devastating, actually, in a black tuxedo with a bow tie that somehow made his dark eyes even more intense. In the car on the way to the Eco Hotel where the gala was being held, Daniel briefed her on who they'd meet. "Marcus will be there, my cousin. The one who'd inherit if I hadn't married. He's not happy about our marriage." "I can't imagine why," Maya said dryly. "You only cost him control of a multi-billion naira company. Marcus is charming, but don't trust him. He's been trying to undermine me and the company for years. If he thinks he can use you against me, he will." Maya felt a chill. "How would he use me against you?" "I don't know yet. Just be careful what you say to him." Daniel's jaw was tight. "And stay close to me tonight. The sharks will be circling, wanting to know everything about the mysterious woman who finally convinced Daniel Roberts to settle down." The gala was overwhelming. Hundreds of Lagos's elite filled the ballroom. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities, all dressed in their finest, all watching as Daniel and Maya entered. She felt every eye on them, heard the whispers. "Is that her? I heard she's from nothing, no family connections at all. How did she land Daniel Roberts?" Daniel's hand found the small of her back, warm and grounding. "Ignore them," he murmured close to her ear. "They're just jealous." "Of what?" "A fake marriage to a man who barely tolerates me." She felt him stiffen, then his hand slid around her waist, pulling her closer. To anyone watching, it looked like an intimate gesture between newlyweds. "I tolerate you just fine," he said, and was that amusement in his voice? They made their rounds, Daniel introducing her to what felt like hundreds of people whose names Maya tried desperately to remember. Everyone wanted to congratulate them, to hear the story of their whirlwind romance, to know when they planned to start a family. That question made both of them tense. "Daniel, brother," a voice cut through the crowd, and a man who looked similar enough to Daniel to be related, but with sharper features and a practiced smile approached. "And this must be the new Mrs. Roberts. Maya, isn't it?" "Marcus," Daniel's voice had gone cold. "Yes, this is my wife, Maya." Marcus took her hand, holding it just a moment too long. Enchanted. "You know, Daniel, you kept this relationship very quiet. None of us had any idea you were even seeing anyone, and suddenly married. It's all very romantic. Or very convenient." "Careful, Marcus." Daniel's voice dropped dangerously low. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." Marcus's smile never wavered. "The timing is interesting, isn't it? Right before your 30th birthday, right before the trust matured. Some might call it suspicious." Maya felt Daniel tense beside her, ready to respond, possibly to cause a scene. She made a split-second decision. "You know what's suspicious?" she said pleasantly, stepping slightly in front of Daniel. "A man who's so concerned with his cousin's marriage that he can't simply offer congratulations like a decent person. But then, I suppose if I'd lost billions because someone found love, I'd be bitter too." Marcus's smile faltered. Around them, several people had gone quiet, listening. Maya continued, her voice warm but with an edge of steel. "Daniel and I didn't broadcast our relationship because we valued our privacy. But make no mistake," she turned and looked at Daniel, letting real emotion show in her eyes, emotion that wasn't entirely fake. "I love my husband. And anyone who suggests otherwise will have to deal with me." She turned back to Marcus. "Now if you'll excuse us, I believe they're about to serve dinner." She took Daniel's arm and walked away, her heart pounding. She'd just made an enemy, she was sure of it. But the look of shock and admiration on Daniel's face made it almost worth it. "That was..." Daniel started once they were out of earshot. "Stupid? Reckless? I was going to say impressive." He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "No one's ever defended me like that before. We're supposed to be married. That means having each other's backs, right? Even if it's just for show." "Right," Daniel said slowly. "Just for show." But the way he looked at her the rest of the evening felt like something more than show. When they danced, required for the newlyweds, Patrick had insisted. Daniel held her close, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. They moved together surprisingly well, and Maya found herself hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. "You dance well," she said, needing to break the charged silence. "Mandatory lessons as a child. Grandfather insisted all Robert's children learn proper ballroom dancing." His hand on her waist shifted slightly, pulling her incrementally closer. "You're not bad yourself." "YouTube videos," Maya admitted. "I watched about 50 tutorials before tonight because I was terrified of embarrassing you." Daniel laughed. Actually laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. "You watched YouTube videos?" "I'm not exactly trained in high society etiquette. I had to learn somehow." "That's..." He shook his head, still smiling. "That's actually kind of amazing. You care about not embarrassing me." "Of course I do. This arrangement might be fake, but I don't want to make your life harder than it already is." The song ended, but Daniel didn't immediately let her go. They stood there, still close, the rest of the room seeming to fade away. His eyes searched her face like he was looking for something, and Maya's breath caught. "Daniel, there you two are." George's voice broke the moment. "I need to introduce you to the Minister of Health. Come along." The spell, whatever it had been, was broken. But as they followed George across the ballroom, Daniel kept his hand on her back, and Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. The shift became more apparent in the weeks that followed. Daniel started joining her in the library in the evenings, first with his laptop and business documents, then one night with a novel, The Count of Monte Cristo. "I haven't read this since university," he said when Maya raised an eyebrow. "Thought it might be time to revisit it." They read in comfortable silence, the only sounds the turning of pages and the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. It became their routine, breakfast together, days apart, dinner together, then the library until late evening. They talked more about books, about Lagos politics, about everything except the contract that bound them and the growing attraction that hummed between them. Maya caught herself watching him when he was absorbed in reading, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way he absently ran his hand through his hair. She noticed how he always made sure her coffee was made exactly how she liked it at breakfast. How he asked about her day and actually listened to the answers. How he'd started smiling more, especially around her. "You're getting attached," Grace warned during one of their weekly lunch dates in Victoria Island. "I can see it in your face when you talk about him." "I'm not attached. We're just getting along better. Like roommates who've learned to coexist. Roommates don't look at each other the way you two did at that gala. I saw the photos in the society pages. That's not acting, Maya. We're good at pretending." "Keep telling yourself that," Grace said, but her expression was worried. Maya knew Grace was right to worry. Because the truth was, she was developing feelings for Daniel. Real feelings that had nothing to do with the contract. She looked forward to seeing him each day. She found herself dressing more carefully, wearing perfume, hoping he'd notice. She memorized his preferences, his moods, the subtle changes in his expression that others might miss. And sometimes when she caught him looking at her, she thought maybe possibly he was feeling something too. The problem was, the contract had an end date. In 9 months, they'd divorce, and Maya would walk away with her settlement and her father's medical care secured. She'd return to her normal life, and Daniel would. What? Find someone else? Someone from his world, someone suitable? The thought made her chest ache. "I need to be more careful," Maya told herself that night, lying alone in the enormous master bedroom. "This is temporary. Don't forget that." But her heart, it seemed, had other ideas. The first crack in their carefully maintained emotional distance came 2 months into their marriage, at a late-night business dinner that ran longer than expected. Daniel had asked Maya to accompany him, some Japanese investors who valued family and wanted to meet his wife. The dinner went well, the deal was struck, and Daniel was in a good mood as they drove home through Lagos's late-night traffic. But as their driver turned onto their street, they saw smoke. "That's coming from our compound," Daniel said, leaning forward. "Drive faster." By the time they arrived, fire trucks were already there, and the staff house, a separate building where some of the household employees lived, was engulfed in flames. People stood in the courtyard in their nightclothes, some crying, others comforting each other. Daniel was out of the car before it fully stopped. "Is everyone accounted for?" he demanded. "Mr. Roberts." Martha rushed over, her face streaked with tears. "Everyone's out except Ruth's baby." She thought he was with her mother, but her mother thought he was already outside and... "Where?" Daniel's voice was sharp. "Ground floor, second room on the left, but Mr. Roberts, the fire department says it's too dangerous." Daniel was already moving toward the building. Maya's heart stopped. "Daniel, no." She grabbed his arm. "You can't go in there. There's a child in there, Maya." His face was set, determined. "I have to. Then I'm coming with you." "No, you're not." He pulled away from her grasp. "Stay here." He ran toward the burning building before she could stop him. Maya watched in horror as he disappeared into the smoke, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The longest 2 minutes of her life passed. Then 3. Then 4. "Come on," Maya whispered, praying to a god she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. "Please, please come on." At minute 5, Daniel emerged, his shirt torn and blackened with smoke, cradling a crying infant against his chest. Paramedics rushed forward, taking the baby, checking Daniel's vitals. Ruth, a young woman who worked in the kitchen, collapsed in relief, crying and thanking God. Maya found she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She'd watched her husband, fake husband, contract husband, risk his life to save a child. The man she'd thought was cold and unfeeling had run into a burning building without hesitation. When the paramedics finally released Daniel, declaring him miraculously unharmed apart from some minor smoke inhalation, Maya walked over to him on shaking legs. "You idiot," she said, her voice trembling. "You complete and utter idiot." Daniel looked at her, seeming surprised by the tears streaming down her face. "Maya, you could have died. For a contract marriage, for a fake wife, you could have died, and I..." Her voice broke. She couldn't finish the sentence because finishing it would mean admitting things she wasn't ready to admit. "Hey," Daniel said softly, pulling her into his arms despite the soot covering his clothes. "I'm okay. I'm right here." Maya buried her face in his chest, not caring about the dirt or the smoke smell, or the staff watching, or anything except the fact that he was alive and solid and here. His arms tightened around her, and she felt his lips press against the top of her head. I'm sorry I scared you, he murmured. Don't ever do that again. I can't promise that. If someone needs help, I know. Maya pulled back slightly to look at him. I know you can't. Because you're actually a good man, aren't you? Underneath all the coldness and the resentment about this marriage, you're decent and brave and… She stopped, realizing she was saying too much, revealing too much. But Daniel was looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch, his hands still on her waist, his face inches from hers. Maya, he said, her name sounding like a question and an answer all at once. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. But then George arrived, having been called by security, and the spell broke. Daniel stepped back, and Maya felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. The staff house fire turned out to be electrical, no one's fault, but it left several employees temporarily homeless. Daniel immediately put them up in the main house, opening guest rooms, insisting they stay as long as needed. Maya watched him organize everything, arranging for new clothes, calling contractors to rebuild, even playing with Ruth's baby to distract the child from the trauma. You really care about them, Maya observed one evening as they finally retreated to the library. Daniel had showered and changed, but she could still see the exhaustion in his face. They're not just employees. Many of them have been with the family for years. Martha practically raised me after my parents died. He poured himself a whiskey, then one for Maya without asking. My father always said that how you treat the people who work for you says everything about your character. Your father sounds like he was a good man. He was. Daniel's expression clouded. He died when I was 22. Car accident. My mother followed 6 months later. Broken heart, the doctors said, though officially it was an aneurysm. I'm so sorry. Maya moved closer, wanting to comfort him somehow. I lost my mother too. 5 years ago. Cancer. Is that why you're so determined to save your father? Because you couldn't save her? The question was gentle, but it cut deep. Maya sank into the chair beside him. Maybe. Probably. When Mom died, I felt so helpless. Dad and I watched her fade away, and there was nothing we could do. This time, with Dad, I actually could do something. Even if that something was marrying a stranger. I don't feel like a stranger anymore, Daniel said quietly. No, Maya agreed. You don't. They sat in silence, drinking their whiskey, the weight of what was building between them hanging in the air like smoke. After the fire, something fundamental changed. Daniel stopped going to his guest room at night. Not because they were sharing a bed, they weren't, but because he'd stay in the library with Maya later and later, talking until they were both exhausted. And then he'd simply sleep on the leather couch there rather than walk down the hall. This is ridiculous, Maya said one night around midnight, finding him stretched out on the couch with a blanket she'd gotten him. That couch can't be comfortable. It's fine. Daniel, you have a perfectly good bed in a guest room. I know. He sat up, rubbing his face. I like being near you. Is that weird? That's probably weird. Forget I said it. Maya's heart did a complicated flip in her chest. It's not weird. I like having you near too. They looked at each other in the dim lamplight, and Maya saw her own longing reflected in his eyes. This was dangerous territory. They both knew it. The contract, the end date, the fact that this wasn't supposed to be real. None of it seemed to matter in moments like this. We should be careful, Daniel said, but he didn't look away. We should, Maya agreed, but she didn't move. The contract says. I know what the contract says. In 9 months, this ends. I know. So we should maintain boundaries. Keep things professional. Absolutely. Neither of them moved. Maya, Daniel said, her name roughened by something that sounded like desperation. Tell me to leave. Tell me to go back to my room and stay away from you. I can't. Why not? Because I don't want you to. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. I know I should. I know this is temporary and getting attached is stupid and will only end in heartbreak. But Daniel, I can't help it. I like you. I like talking to you. I like the way you smile when you think no one's watching. I like how you take your coffee black, but you hate it. You just drink it that way because your father did. I like that you're kind to the staff and brave enough to run into burning buildings and smart enough to run a company, but still get absorbed in novels like a teenager. She was rambling now, unable to stop. I like waking up knowing I'll see you at breakfast. I like the way you look at me sometimes, like I'm something precious instead of just a contract. And I know this is fake, I know it ends, but for whatever time we have, I don't want to keep pretending I don't feel this. Daniel stood slowly, closing the distance between them. Do you want to know what I like? His voice was low, intimate. I like that you're not intimidated by my family or my money or any of this. I like that you defend me to people like Marcus, even though you barely know me. I like that you cry during movies and think I don't notice. I like finding you in the library surrounded by books like you're exactly where you belong. He reached out, tucking a curl behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. I like that you saw me as the enemy when we met, but you still try to make this work. I like your strength and your stubbornness, and the way you take your coffee with so much cream and sugar it's barely coffee anymore. And I really, really like looking at you and knowing that for the next 9 months you're mine. Daniel, I know it's temporary. I know this ends. But maybe. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Maya's breath hitched. Maybe for these 9 months, we could stop pretending. Stop keeping walls up. Just be together. However that looks. That's a terrible idea, Maya whispered. I know. We're going to get hurt. Probably. In 9 months, this ends and we go our separate ways. That's the contract. So this would be just physical? Just for now. Daniel's expression shifted, something painful flashing across his face. If that's what you want. Was that what she wanted? Maya searched her heart and knew the answer was no. She wanted more than physical. She wanted mornings and evenings and everything in between. She wanted Daniel, all of him, not just his body but his heart. But wanting that was dangerous when there was an expiration date stamped on their marriage. I don't know what I want, she admitted. Except that I want to stop fighting this. Whatever this is. Then let's stop fighting it. Daniel leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. We have 9 months, Maya. That's 9 months more than most people get. Maybe it's enough. And when it ends, we'll deal with that when it comes. But right now, in this moment, I need to kiss you. Really kiss you. Not for cameras or appearances or any reason except that I've been thinking about it for weeks and I can't wait any longer. Then stop waiting, Maya breathed. Daniel's mouth found hers, and it was nothing like their wedding kiss. This was hungry and desperate and real. Maya's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Daniel's arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her slightly so he could deepen the kiss. She tasted the whiskey on his tongue, felt the scratch of his evening stubble against her skin, and thought nothing had ever felt more right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against hers again. We should probably set some ground rules. Rules? Maya's brain was still fuzzy from the kiss. For the next 9 months. What this is, what it isn't. Expectations. Boundaries. That sounds very unromantic. I'm trying to protect both of us here. If we're doing this, really doing this, we need to be clear about what happens at the end. Maya knew he was right, even though the practical conversation was the last thing she wanted. Okay, rules. They moved to the couch, sitting close but not touching, trying to create physical distance to think clearly even though every cell in Maya's body wanted to close that distance again. First rule, Daniel started. Honesty. Complete honesty with each other about what we're feeling, what we want, all of it. Agreed. Second rule, discretion. No one can know this has become more than the contract. Not your grandfather, not my father, no one. It would complicate everything. Third rule, Daniel's voice dropped, became more serious. When the year ends, we both walk away. No drama, no complications. We honor the contract. That rule hurt, but Maya nodded. When the year ends, we walk away. Do you agree to these terms? Daniel asked, and despite the heaviness of the moment, Maya almost laughed. Are you really asking me to sign another contract? I'm asking if we're on the same page. Because Maya, if we do this, if I let myself really feel this, there's no halfway for me. I'm all in or I'm out. And 9 months from now, when I have to let you go, it's going to destroy me. So I need to know you understand what you're agreeing to. Maya looked at this man who'd somehow become so important to her in such a short time. She thought about the loneliness of going back to her old life, dating other people, pretending Daniel had been just a business arrangement. The thought made her chest ache. But she also thought about 9 months of having him, really having him. 9 months of falling asleep next to him, waking up in his arms, exploring whatever this thing between them could become. 9 months of not holding back, of letting herself love him even knowing it would end. Was it worth it? Was temporary happiness worth the pain that would inevitably follow? I'm in, she said. All in. For however long we have. Daniel's smile was brilliant and heartbreaking all at once. Then we're doing this. We're doing this. He pulled her into his arms, and Maya let herself sink into the embrace, memorizing the feel of him, the smell of him, storing up moments for when all she'd have were memories. "Stay with me tonight," Daniel murmured against her hair. "Not for anything physical, just stay. I don't want to be apart anymore." So they curled up together on the library couch, Maya's head on Daniel's chest, his arms around her, and fell asleep to the sound of rain beginning to fall outside and their own synchronized breathing. When Martha found them there in the morning, tangled together under a blanket, she smiled to herself and quietly closed the door, deciding that breakfast could wait a bit longer. The next 3 months were the happiest of Maya's life, and the most terrifying, because with each passing day, she fell deeper in love with a man she'd have to leave. They stopped maintaining separate bedrooms. The first night Daniel officially moved his things into the master suite, he'd been almost nervous, like a teenager on a first date. "You're sure about this?" he asked, hanging his clothes in the closet next to hers. "We can still keep separate spaces if you're more comfortable." Maya answered by pulling him down for a kiss that left no doubt about what she wanted. They made love that night for the first time, a slow, tender exploration that was both thrilling and terrifying in its intensity. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets with Daniel's fingers trailing patterns on her back, Maya had to fight back tears because it felt so right, so perfect, and so impossibly temporary. "Hey," Daniel said, tilting her face to look at him. "Where'd you go?" "Just thinking. About how much this is going to hurt when it ends," Maya thought. But remembering their first rule, honesty, she said, "About how I never expected this. Any of this. You." Daniel's expression softened. "Neither did I. I thought I'd spend a year resenting you, counting down the days until I could get my life back. Instead," he paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Instead, you've become the best part of my days." "Just the days?" Maya teased, needing to lighten the mood before she said something she couldn't take back. "The nights are pretty spectacular too," Daniel grinned, pulling her closer. They fell into a routine that felt like a real marriage. Breakfast together, where they'd discuss their plans for the day. Daniel still went to Roberts Industries, but now he came home earlier, eager to see her. Maya had started doing some freelance editing work from home and had begun seriously writing her novel. A romance, ironically, about 2 people trapped in an arranged marriage who fell in love. "Is this us?" Daniel asked one evening, reading over her shoulder in the library. Maya tried to close her laptop. "It's fiction. Maya, the male character, is a CEO named David who has dark hair and is emotionally closed off. The female character is a book lover named Maria who agrees to a contract marriage to save her father. This is absolutely us. It's inspired by us maybe," Maya admitted. "But it's fiction. In my story, they get a happy ending." The words hung between them, heavy with implications. In their story, there was no happy ending clause. Just 9 months, now 6, and then separation. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Right. Because this is temporary. That's what we agreed to." "I know what we agreed to." He stood abruptly, pacing. "I just sometimes forget that there's an end date. When I'm with you, it doesn't feel temporary. It feels permanent." Maya's heart raced. "Daniel, forget I said that. I'm not trying to renegotiate the contract. I'm just..." He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm in deeper than I expected to be. That's all." "Me too," Maya admitted quietly. "Way deeper." They looked at each other across the library, and Maya saw her own conflict reflected in his eyes. They were breaking their own rules, letting feelings grow beyond what was safe or smart. But neither of them seemed able to stop. They attended more public events together, and now their affection wasn't fake. The touches were real, the smiles genuine. At a charity gala for children's education, they danced and Maya whispered, "Everyone thinks we're so in love. Aren't we?" Daniel said, and Maya's breath caught because that was the closest either of them had come to saying it out loud. "Daniel, don't." "Why not? It's true, isn't it? These past months, this has become real. You must feel it too." "Of course I feel it," Maya said, her voice tight. "But feeling it doesn't change the contract. Doesn't change the fact that in 6 months, this ends. What if it didn't have to?" Maya's heart soared and shattered simultaneously. "You can't be serious. Your grandfather, the contract, everything was designed for exactly 1 year. Contracts can be renegotiated. Extended. This isn't a business deal, Daniel. This is our lives." Maya pulled away slightly, trying to create physical space to think clearly. "What are you suggesting?" That we just stay married? Permanently? Would that be so terrible? Yes. No. I don't know. Maya's voice rose, causing several nearby couples to glance their way. She lowered it. Daniel, this wasn't supposed to be real. We agreed. No complications, no drama. We walk away clean.